Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Tistina Yugioh deck profile for post-Age of Overlord. We got a good amount of new support for the Tistina deck, including a brand new Xyz monster for the overall playstyle of the deck, which is meant to flip face-down monsters that your opponent controls, and then utilize those monsters in very different ways, including with one of our new main deck monsters, Tainted of Tistina, being able to tribute that monster to summon this one out onto the field, using some of the more generic Aqua support, and then just some of the other level 10 support that we've had printed with the last couple sets as well to assist with the overall power of the deck. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. I'm running 3 copies of Crystal God Tistina. During your main phase, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Crystal God Tistina once per turn, so it's a great way to combat against link monsters, being able to not be flip face down, sending those monsters, but also to interrupt your opponent's own plays. Just being able to flip those monsters also, like I said before, gives you access to being able to tribute out cards like the new Tainted of Tistina using a face down card of your opponent's. We're also running 3 copies of the Demigod of the Tistina. If you control a Tistina card, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can add 1 Tistina Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand. During your opponent's turn, if you control Crystal God Tistina, quick effect, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. So once again, more of a quick play card effect, being able to control this card and the Crystal God Tistina to then send your opponent's cards as a quick effect to the graveyard can interrupt a good number of plays they may try to do against you using this card. And also, we're running 3 copies of the new Tainted of Tistina with this main deck monster. You can tribute this card face up by tributing 1 face down monster your opponent controls. This card's level becomes 10 if it was normal summoned or set. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard except from the field, you can target 1 Tistina monster you control. This turn it can make a second attack during each battle phase. So it's a great setup card for the tribute summon fact of being able to take one of your opponent's monsters, which can also be flipped face down with any of your other Tistina monsters that I mentioned before. Making it a level 10 allows us more support for it also to be used for your rank 10 plays, including going into the new Tistina, the divinity that defies darkness. So you have all this and more by being able to just utilize your opponent's own monsters, and you contribute a good number of cards they may have as long as you flip them face down with your other Tistina cards. I'm also running 3 of the new Returned of the Tistina. If this card is in your hand, you can target 1 Tistina monster you control, except for Returned of the Tistina. Special summon this card. If you do, its level becomes that targeted monster's level. If this card's in your graveyard, you can target an Aqua Xyz monster you control, attach this card to it as material. You can only use each effect of Return to the Tistina once per turn, but the Aqua Xyz monster obviously is meant to be the new divinity that defies darkness Xyz monster, which we'll go over when we get to the extra deck. Just having the target for a Tistina monster you control, return except for this card, giving you the special summon and adjusting its level depending on that monster, which will be obviously a level 10 adjustment. With our other monster that we run, just being 2 copies of Fallen of Tistina, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to place 1 Divine Domain Batistina from your deck face up in your field zone, which is the field spell we received from the previous booster set. And that also, with this card, if a face up Tistina spell or trap you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, while this card's in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can banish this card to special summon 1 Light Tistina from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So more special summon power. If you wanted to run a 3rd copy of this card, I thought about maybe reducing the number of either Crystal God of Tistina or Demigod down to 2. So it can always be the spot you place for a 3rd copy here, or some of the more generic Aqua support that I also run at the end of the main deck monster lineup. And then I'm also running 1 copy of Sentinel of Tistina and 2 copies of Hound of Tistina, having more graveyard options with these monsters. With Hound of Tistina, if it's in your graveyard and you control a Light Tistina, you can special summon it. It doesn't have the level adjustment, which is why I don't like it as much as Tainted of Tistina or Returned of Tistina, but still some options for special summoning monsters out onto the field from the graveyard. So more of a setup, which we can use with our Supreme Sea Mare, which I also run 2 copies of. If it's normal or special summon, being able to send one Aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard. So I also like this card for the fact that it can set up cards like our new level 1 Fallen of Tistina into the graveyard for us to use, with the other Aqua monsters being 2 copies of Therion Reaper Foom, with this card being able to target an Aqua monster in your graveyard, special summon this card from your hand, and equip that monster, giving us just additional resources on the field to make use of for the option of you giving us an easy special summon using this card. And then lastly, for the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, just the hand trap of choice for stopping any of your opponent's searches and graveyard setups. If you wanted to increase the number of any of the Hound of Tistinas or the Sentinel of Tistinas, you can also just take out the Reaper Fooms for spots to increase either of those numbers to 2 or 3 ofs for those ones also. Moving on now to the spells. I'm running 3 copies of Divine Domain Batistina. During your main phase, you can send 1 Tistina monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then if your opponent controls 3 or more face-up cards, you can special summon 1 Crystal God Tistina from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Batistina once per turn. And if it's in your field zone and destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 Tistina monster from your deck or graveyard. Having more special summon targets now also with the Age of Overlord booster set, just being able to set up the main monster that is meant to flip all of our opponent's monsters face down makes it all the better for that summon onto the field, just by the fact that if your opponent controls 3 monsters, for the summon to special summon 1 from your hand or deck. So then you have that option to summon out the monster, and then additional ways to flip your opponent's monsters face down and set up the rest of your engine. Also running the 3 copies of Breath of Tistina. During your main phase, you can normal summon 1 Tistina monster in addition to your normal summoner set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can target 1 face-up monster you control, or if you control a light Tistina monster, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field instead. Change that monster to face-down defense, then add 1 Tistina card from your deck to your hand. So search power for a particular one that you may need, being able to target a face-up monster on the field. Change it face-down can also then just give you setup for using Tainted of Tistina, because then you'll have the target for the tribute of your opponent's monster to summon this card onto the field. I also run 3 copies of the new quick play spell, Play of the Tistina. You special summon 1 Tistina monster from your hand or graveyard in defense, but return it to hand during the end phase of this turn. You can only play 1 per turn, but just being able to give yourself a demigod on the field that can then react to your opponent, being able to sit all your opponent's monsters face down, makes this a pretty good defensive, but also a good offensive quick play spell to just set up that particular monster you need on your field. With the last of the spells being 2 copies of Tokusano Shinki Yojin. You send monsters from your hand and face up on the field to the graveyard whose total levels equal 10 to draw 2 cards. So just more draw power to go through some of the cards in the deck. It's also not a once per turn, so if you draw into another one and you have the level 10 monster or the add up in your hand to send to the graveyard, you not only can you help to set up some of the other Tistinas if their levels equal out to 10 in your hand, you'll get those graveyard plays ready for setup using this card. Since it just says send monsters, it doesn't have to equal out right to the level 10 monster, but you will have some easier monsters to send like Demigod and Crystal God Tistina for this card's draw. And then all the better, because then you have the targets in your graveyard for play of the Tistina if you end up drawing into this also. For the traps, I'm running 2 copies of the new Discordance of the Tistina. You activate one of these effects if you control a Tistina monster, banish 1 card from your opponent's graveyard face down. So it's great interruption for those cards, but also if you control a Tistina monster, special summon from the extra deck, banish all cards from your opponent's graveyard face down, and you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Tistina monster in your graveyard, add to your hand. You can only use 1 Discordance of the Tistina effect per turn, and only once that turn. Being able to take out your opponent's whole graveyard is definitely scary, but you have to have the Xyz monster, otherwise it's just a 1-card target for the summon of that card, but still pretty easy to get out for the special summon, and then the additional play that you'll use for the actual Xyz monster, and also 2 copies of Embrace of the Tistina. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can target that monster, change it to face down defense. During the end phase, you can target 1 face down defense position monster your opponent controls, take control of that monster. You can only use each effect of Embrace of the Tistina once per turn. So more of a continuous trap option, having the monster effect options to then change that monster that activated that card effect face down, and then also being able to target a face down defense monster your opponent controls and take control of it, giving you more resources to use for your own tribute plays or extra deck setup. With the last of the traps being the 1 copy of Signs of the Tistina, being able to summon this card out as a token, but also when it leaves the field, destroy this card during your opponent's turn. When this card leaves the field, destroy that target. Just another level 10 monster resource to potentially summon onto the field, and another search with some of our other cards we run as well. For the the extra deck monsters. Ideally, I do want to run 3 copies of Tistina, the divinity that defies darkness. I have a number 81 and a Gustav Max as just other rank 10 placeholders for this card, needing 2 level 10 monsters to summon it out. If it's special summon, you can send all face down cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Tistina, the divinity that defies darkness, once per turn. And once per turn, if this card has Crystal God Tistina as material, you can detach 1 material from this card to gain 2,000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. And if this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card while it has material, you can special summon 1 Tistina monster from your graveyard. So as long as you have that other target while it's destroyed, you can easily get back Demigod or Crystal God Tistina back onto the field thanks to this card. And having so many monsters that can at least adjust and attach onto materials onto this card gives you more resources for the detach to have this card gain attack power to be able to swing into your opponent for some pretty heavy attack hits. I also run the 1 copy of Sky Palace Gongre Dive for the more destruction plays, the number 81 for protection of the card itself, Gustav for burn damage, and also the 1 copy of Baguska and Abyss Dweller for some of the rank 4 Xyz plays that we can go into, and also the 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus for more overlay power over any of our Xyz monsters that have attacked into our opponent this turn. For the Link monsters, the 1 copy of IP Masquerena, the 1 copy of Lena the Light Charmer, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer, and 1 Area the Water Charmer, along with the 1 copy of Underclock Taker and the 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, just to use with the IP Masquerena for any time we can use any of our Link plays, more especially when we use cards like our Reaper Foom, and then also the additional Tistina monsters we may just want to set up in the graveyard for extra deck plays. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I said before, the new quick play spell to be able to help set up our main go-to Tistina monsters is a big help for the special summon, since you just special summon 1 Tistina monster from your hand or graveyard, so you can summon out your Crystal God Tistina onto the field thanks to this card from your hand. And then during the main phase, just change monsters your opponent control as possible face down. So if you can flip one of your opponent's monsters face down and then have that target for your Tainted of the Tistina, you can then use that monster as the tribute for this monster, making it a level 10. Since you haven't even normal summoned yet, just for the tribute summon of this card, then you can use the 2 to overlay into your new Tistina, that divinity that defies darkness, and then have this rank 10 monster with the additional card effect, since you have Crystal God Tistina, to then send more cards your opponent may have to the graveyard. And if you can set up any of your traps, you'll have a full banish power for your opponent's cards as well. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, this new support that we got for the Tistina deck definitely makes it more of a powerhouse and more of a focus with the Xyz plays that we are meant to do with it. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.